Welcome to Real World Peaceful Parenting, a podcast for parents that are tired of yelling, threatening, and punishing their kids. Join mom and master certified parent coach Lisa Smith as she gives you actionable, step-by-step strategies that'll help you transform your household from chaos to cooperation. Let's dive in.
Welcome to today's episode. I just want you to know how much I love being with you each week and how proud I am of you for investing this time in your parenting, in your kids, and your family. Well done. Now, if you've been listening for a while, you know my goal each week is to bring you tips, ideas, and support that helps you create deep connection and cooperation with your kids. And today, I want to take you on a journey to see what is possible for you, your parenting, and your family. Today, I want you to listen in on a coaching call between myself and Samantha. Samantha is the mother of an incredibly strong-willed 6-year-old boy, Julian, who is one awesome human being. In today's conversation, you'll hear the journey Samantha's been on as she navigates the path of peaceful parenting with her strong-willed son and all that comes up for her and her own childhood wounds. I know many of you will relate to Samantha's story of growing up in a dominant household and the wounds that come from the power over dominant parenting style, and the many aha moments she's had as she breaks the cycle she inherited and moves towards real-world peaceful parenting. I'm excited to share with you this real, open, and authentic conversation between Samantha and me because I want you to know what's possible. I want you to know what moving down the real-world peaceful parenting path looks like. I want you to know so you can walk the path too. As you listen, keep an ear out for specifically how Samantha is healing and reparenting herself right alongside her son, and how this is helping her break the cycle of dominant parenting and be fully present with her son. How this work, which we do inside the Hive, my monthly membership community, is helping her overcome her triggers, stay regulated when Julian is storming, and not storm alongside him. So good. I love it so much. Many parents I coach and work with inside the Hive are cycle breakers just like Samantha. These parents are breaking the inherited parenting patterns that create disconnection, cooperation, and impact trust between you and your kids. Patterns like yelling, shutting down, conditional love, conditional acceptance, disconnection, punishing, hitting, shaming, judging, etc. So enjoy listening to this coaching conversation between Samantha and myself. And if this speaks to you and you recognize unhealthy familial patterns you inherited and want tools and support like Samantha to break the cycle and not pass these along to your kids, come join us in the Hive. You're absolutely going to love it, I promise. You can jump on board at the Hive by going to www.thehivecoaching.com. I'd love to have you join us. And in the meantime, enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Samantha. I am so excited to be talking with you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. So for the listeners, Samantha is a Hive member who's been on the path of real-world peaceful parenting for about a year now, right?
Maybe 6 months, 7 months.
Okay. Time
Something
flies.
like
Samantha is a mom to a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, strong-willed 6-year-old. And today we're going to talk about and do some coaching around process problem versus character problem, which I'm super excited for us all to listen in on as we have a coaching session on how to help her son, Julian, understand process problem versus character problem. So give us some background and let's get started, Samantha.
So I've been thinking a lot about process problems versus character problems and where the idea that something that's a process problem then becomes in your mind that it's a character problem. Where do we get that idea? And I think for myself, I got the idea because growing up, my mom was very stressed out. She was the breadwinner. She was the one doing all of the working, and she was stressed out and overwhelmed. And she came home from work and she just wanted compliance. She did not want anyone to question her, you had better have the house picked up. You had, there better not be shoes on the floor. There was one time that my brother and I left our shoes out of our cubbies, and she got home and she said, "Why, I told you. I have told you a million times these shoes need to be picked up and they are not to be on the floor." And she grabbed our shoes, and we didn't have a lot of money nor shoes. And they were our only pairs of shoes. And she grabbed them. She walked downstairs to the dumpster and she threw them in the dumpster. And she said, "If you want to have shoes, you'll go into the dumpster and pick them out of there." And so my brother, who's older, jumped in the dumpster and was like, "Here, I'll find them and you take, I'll throw them out to you." And growing up, I thought that was pretty harsh. That wasn't a very nice thing to do. And what would she have done if we hadn't gone in there and gotten them? But of course, we knew that we weren't going to have shoes if we didn't. So we had to. And I'm not trying to.
Let me just jump in here and say, so what you're saying, it sounds like you grew up in a home where obedience was the only way. Obedience. Do what I say. There's no wiggle room. You will do what I say. And you understand where your mom was coming from. That's probably the only capacity she had. She was juggling a lot. It was stressful. She only had so much. But you grew up in a household where it was all about obedience. Do as I say.
Yes. My grandfather had a saying actually that was, "Do as I say, not as I do." And my dad, I grew up in a household that was my mom. That was my experience of my mom growing up. My father is much more willing to slow down and connect. And
compromise
and really kind of, he's a big into introspection. So, and my mom is not. And so we just knew that we had to comply. And if you didn't comply, and if you didn't do everything perfectly, then there was going to be some kind of trouble around it.
Sure. So now let's talk about, now you're the parent of a 6-year-old who's very strong-willed, opinionated in a good way, has ideas and wants to be heard. So where does this idea of character problem come from? Let me take a guess. Let me explain. You can comment on it. It's this paradox that happens because I grew up in a house very similar to yours. Mm-hmm. Very similar. And the paradox is this: I don't want to raise an obedient child. I want them to have a say. Kids are people too was my mantra as a kid. Kids are people too, And I didn't feel like I grew up in a household where people understood that, respected that, had any room for that. So I swore that if I ever had a child, that I would understand that kids are people too. So I have a son, and I want him to have all this white space to push back, to question. But in the moment of when it happens, because my brain was trained in an obedient household, I would get triggered by his lack of obedience. And I would go into judgment of him. He's being disrespectful. He's being difficult. He's being rude. He's being non-compliant. And then that would cause me to open my mouth, and statements that would come out that were character problems instead of process problems. And it's the paradox. Until you do the healing work, the paradox is what causes the judgment that causes us to go into voicing the challenge or the task at hand as though it is a character problem.
Right. I was thinking about it and thinking about how everything was a character problem. Everything that you did wrong, it was because you're lazy, or you're disrespectful, or you don't care about my time. And I have found myself thinking my husband and my son do not care about my time, because they know that they just do something and then leave it all a mess. And they know that it drives me crazy, and they do it anyway. And it's because they don't respect me. But really, that's not why. It's because they get into a creative idea and they just leave the last thing behind. And so that's a process problem, not a character problem. Like, I'm starting to see where my upbringing and my expectation that everything has to be done right now at this moment perfectly, that's creating in my son and my husband and I's relationship that, there's no room for anything except my expectations.
Yes. And I would say that when you were a child, the way it was voiced to you, Peggy O'Mara says, who's one of the early child psychiatrists, she says, our outer voice becomes our kid's inner voice. Okay. So you grew up in a household where your outer voice, your mother, who is, same-sex parent, is the greatest influence in a kid's life till the age of 10. So you have a mother that is constantly languaging to you that you have character problems. I don't doubt that your mother loved you and she was doing her best. It's not an attack on your mother, but she was languaging to you in a way, the corrections, the coaching, the parenting was languaged in a way that you have a character problem. And this is why this is so powerful and important for parents to understand this, because that outer voice became your inner voice. And now you look through a lens of when you see your son do something that you did as a child, your brain wants to automatically go to, that's a character problem. Let's take an example of the shoes. Okay. So let's say he comes home and he takes his shoes off in the doorway and walks right past. And, nobody wants to trip over shoes, right? So your brain looks at it and goes, that's so disrespectful, because that's what your mother said to you. And so you go into judgment, and then we want to language to our kids that there's a character problem around putting shoes in a bin. It's just a process problem. He's 6. He's just got to learn to, you don't leave the shoes here. You pick them up and put them in the bin. So part of this is healing the inner child, right? And it's coming up with new thoughts where you catch yourself going, you know what? I don't need to judge him. He's not a bad person because he took his shoes off in the entryway. And I can work with him to understand that the process in our home is we walk in the door, we take the shoes off, and instead of leaving the entryway, we put them in the bucket or the bin or the basket that we ran out to TJ Maxx to buy, the cute little basket. We put them in the basket automatically. And eventually what will happen is his habit brain will take over, because 75% of our lives are ruled on habit. His habit brain will take over and go, shoes come off, they go in the pretty basket.
Right.
But until then, we don't need to make him feel like a bad human being because he's not obedient and compliant and putting the shoes away. Tell me what you think about that. Well,
yeah. And because he doesn't have a developed prefrontal cortex and he doesn't have executive function, and he's just thinking, I have to go wash my hands. It's not important that I put the shoes in the basket. What's really important is that I wash the day off of my hands. And I have, that is a process that we have set up that has been very successful. So it's like, what else is going on here? I try to ask, when you can catch yourself and remember all of the tools and all of the things that we're learning in the Hive, especially, you go, oh, wait a minute. Okay. No, this is not the end of the world, that the shoes are on, that someone's going to trip over them, and he will learn it. And he is very concerned with other people, and he does want to do the right thing,
and coachable. And eventually, and you know what else is a beautiful thought you could bring in here, Samantha? Wow, we're 50% of the way there, because at least he's taking the shoes off, right? So I'm halfway to my goal of teaching him that the process in our home is step 1, shoes come off. Step 2, they go in the basket. Well, 50% of the way there, and that would be a beautiful thought to cling to as well. And it's just, and this happens to so many of us that were raised in obedient homes, is that we were made to believe that obedience is everything. And if we don't obey, we're of poor character. And now it's just a matter of healing that little girl whose shoes got thrown in the dumpster, who was expected to, when someone said jump, your only response was, yes, ma'am, how high? Right. And so it's healing that and then rewiring the brain that my kid is 6. So all of the things that aren't going well in a given day are just process problems. And here's the beauty. If you language it that way for him, that will become his inner voice. And he will grow up to be a kid that looks at everything as like, well, let's just figure it out and fix it. Let's go buy a basket. Let's put the basket near the door. When we come home, we'll take our shoes off and put them in the basket. Then we'll wash the day off our hands. Mm-hmm. These are just process problems that can be solved.
Yes. And I realized that I started as a child to anticipate what she wanted me to do, to anticipate doing something so I wouldn't anger her, get in trouble. And I don't want it to come across like my mom is a horrible person. My mom and I get along great now because we have, I have a child and I see what her life was like. And, I have perspective. So, but I see how it has turned me into somebody who tries to fix things before they become a problem. Yes. And that's not helpful to anyone. And that doesn't help me grow or them grow or leave any kind of room for the way that somebody else wants to do something and that they have good ideas as well. It's not just, I don't need to be in control of everything.
Right. Yes. That's a very common thing that happens. So when there is obedience and punishment is at the core of the child rearing, then you're at a fork in the road and you're either going to go towards rebellion, which some people choose, or what happens is you begin to birth a people pleaser, right? Let me get ahead of this. Let me keep the peace. Let me anticipate what she's going to find fault with or upset. Mm-hmm. And also, if every time I do something wrong, my character gets attacked and I feel bad about myself, then of course I'm going to want to get ahead of that, right? So then I become a scanner, a diligent watcher of things going on in the universe. I'm sure as a little girl, as you grew up, your mom walked in the door and you're sensing her mood. Which parent is walking in the door? Do I have everything as it should be? And then the problem with that is it might feel great as a parent, but then what happens is then we raise people pleasers who go out into the world and continue scanning the world for how do I please you? How do I not get in trouble? Maybe how do I not get caught? Maybe the things you do decide to do were motivated to not get caught instead of doing the right thing from the wrong thing. And, I call myself a recovering people pleaser too. And it was the exact same thing. I wanted to constantly scan my environment so that I could do everything I could to keep tempers down, to keep the storms down, to keep people's attacking me and my character down to a minimum so that I didn't feel bad about myself.
Right. And the greatest gift that Julian has given me is that none of it works on him. None of it.
Amen.
He doesn't care. If you get angry, he actually is unfazed by
your anger. Yeah.
He's completely unfazed. And you can't get compliance out of him by trying to dominate him. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work. And I think that as frustrating as that can be when you're trying to be, gain compliance through dominance. And when before I joined the peaceful parenting revolution, it's like, this is untenable. I can't keep this up. Yeah. This kid, but he doesn't care that he's getting in trouble right now. He doesn't care that I'm angry, but that's a gift.
Well, I would offer, Samantha, in my experience, it's usually a marriage of the strong-willed child and the parent who doesn't have the personality to dominate. It's a combo. It's because you're a recovering people pleaser that you don't have it in you to dominate over him, and he's not taking it. And so, it's same exact thing in our house. My son is very comfortable when his father or I are angry with him. He's not panicked like I was. When someone got angry at me in my childhood, there was often very dire consequences as a result of that. So the anger was a precursor or an aura to very bad things that were going to happen, whether it was attacking my character or some physical punishment or something being removed to punish me into submission. And so, because we don't do that here, when I am upset with Malcolm about something, he doesn't like it. but he's not panicked or trying to fix or get ahead of it. And sometimes I just look at him and I'm like, wow, I'm blown away by it. And it's a compliment to you and the environment you're creating with Julian. And it's also, I just think as people, as recovering or current people pleasers, it's virtually impossible to stay on top of that dominance 24/7, right? So then you end up waffling between dominance and permissive, and that actually is not good for our kids, the waffling between, because then they feel insecure because they don't know which person you're going to present.
Right.
But I also want to go back and say this. Let's go back to the shoe example. When the shoes come off and they're left in the entryway and you're not attacking his character, it's really just about the shoes. You're just wanting the shoes to get in the basket, and he feels this. And so it creates this beautiful opportunity for you to encourage, coach, teach, remind. And because there's no attack on his character, you don't listen. You only listen when I yell. You're so disrespectful. You don't do anything. When we're not attacking the character, there's all this space to just work on getting the shoes in the basket. Then it literally just becomes about the shoes getting in the basket and not about how I feel disrespected and how you feel beaten down. And it doesn't turn into this big thing.
Yeah, because really, there are big things going on in our lives, and shoes are not one of them. We can turn any mountain, molehill into a mountain if we want to.
Yeah. But because you're just making it about the shoes, he doesn't have to panic when you get frustrated. Because let's say it's day 12 and you walk in the door and it's day 12 of the shoes not getting in the basket and you trip over them. You don't fall down and break your leg, but you sort of stumble. You've got groceries in your hand. He came in before you, don't look down. Your foot feels the shoe and you kick it out of the way. And maybe you have a frustrated moment, right? Like, Julian, we need to get the shoes in the basket. Come back here and get them in the basket. But because you're not attacking his character, it can just be about, and he doesn't have to get super dysregulated by it because he doesn't fear some big thing coming, whether it's an explosion or attacking his character or punishing him, sending him to his room or taking TV away for 5 nights. It's just, hey, buddy, we got to get these shoes in the basket. It's really beautiful. And I think everybody listening can agree, shoes getting in a basket are just about it. It really is just a process problem. Mm-hmm. We don't need to attack someone's character at 6 years old who is 19 years away from a fully developed prefrontal cortex. And at 6 years old has little to no executive function, which is the ability to see a couple steps ahead and make connections and understand things and logic and, plan ahead. We don't need to attack a 6-year-old who's 19 years away to feel like a horrible human being because the shoes aren't getting in the basket.
I have a question about when that does happen, when you're 6 years old and you get criticized and attacked constantly. What does that do to the way that your brain develops going forward?
Good question. And there's definitely evidence in the world that high stress rewires the brain in a way that we don't want it to. So that happens. And I would also really bring us back to the idea that if I grow up in an environment where on the regular, my character is attacked, then I grow up with low self-esteem, right? Because I think that then I take on, I'm disrespectful. I can't get it right. I only listen to people when they yell at me. I never do what I'm told. To a parent, telling a kid, you never do what I tell you might seem innocent, right? Or you're disrespectful, or the only way I can get you to listen is to yell at you. But then that is what that is the lens that I see myself through. I'm disrespectful to people. I don't do what I'm told. And so I take it on and I feel bad about myself, and it lingers, as you described. And, this is the work that we grow up then to have to do. We have to heal the child in us because it has affected our self-esteem, maybe not our self-love, but our esteem, how we view ourselves. And this is why I'm passionate about making sure that we language with kids as though it is a process problem and not a character problem.
Right. Because it feels like it becomes then you take it in, you tell yourself over and over, yes, I am a lazy person. And then, well, why should I bother putting the shoes in the basket ever? I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm lazy anyway. I'm just going to mess something else up eventually.
Right. Or you're afraid to try as an adult or a young teen because you identify yourself as lazy. And I think the bigger picture is if there's constant attack of character, you grow up just feeling generally flawed, less than. I can speak from experience. I grew up feeling horribly flawed and just less than other people. And so I either worked extra hard to win people over to a ridiculous level that prevented authentic relationships, or I wouldn't even try or enter the game because I was lazy or flawed or just not worthy or not good enough. Or if I entered the game and wasn't amazing from the start, couldn't get the shoes in the basket right away, my brain would go, see, well, you're just less than, you're lazy, you can't accomplish this. And so it does affect your esteem and how you view yourself. And even if someone else tells you you're amazing, you don't believe it because this is your inner voice. Hopefully I'm explaining that well.
I think so.
It leaves a mark. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're someone who's relating to this as an adult and you're like, whoa, Samantha and Lisa are just, I'm with him, sister. I'm right there with you. I had the same upbringing. I thought or think I'm flawed and less than. Don't lose hope. You can heal your childhood wounds. One of the beauties of being a parent is we have the opportunity to heal the 6-year-old Samantha right alongside the 6-year-old Julian, right? The 17-year-old Lisa right along the 17-year-old Malcolm. Mm-hmm. And so it's part of the process of peaceful parenting is to heal those wounds right alongside. And I have to say, this, and I think Samantha, you can attest to this. This is a lot of the work we do inside the Hive, right? We recognize how we're getting triggered by the judgments, by the thoughts, by the experience, and how we're languaging to our kids. And then we have an opportunity to rewire our brain so that, you're languaging that the shoes in the entryway is a process problem. And it isn't, I want to be clear, it isn't that we're going up to our kids and saying, Julian, we have a process problem here. It's the words we're using like, hey, buddy, remember, we're working on getting those shoes in the basket. Go pick them up, please, and put them in the basket. I look forward to the day when you remember to do it. But you are 50% of the way there, and that you are remembering to take your shoes off when you come in.
Right.
That is how we would parent with a process problem rather than what is wrong with you? How many times do I have to tell you? Every day I tell you to put those shoes in the basket, and every day you don't listen to me. You're so disrespectful. I can't believe this. I cannot believe you cannot remember to put those shoes in the basket. How many more times am I going to have to ask you? That is parenting as though the shoes are a character problem. And I don't want you to do that, listener.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of saying at least a few of those phrases, not about the shoes necessarily, but just in general, and that was because that's the language that was used with me. And like you said, parenting, I'm not just parenting Julian. Really what I'm doing mostly is parenting myself. I'm showing myself compassion for the little inner child in me and seeing Julian as just the mirror that's holding the mirror up to me.
The little girl in you that forgot to put the shoes in the basket and mom came home and threw them in a dumpster. And you're thinking, well, now what are we going to do? I'm not going to have shoes for school tomorrow because it's 9:00 at night. And I know we're not getting shoes and I know we don't have money for shoes. And why is she throwing them in the dumpster in the first place? And now we have to go get them. And she's really angry. And I could have done a better job. That's yes, you're parenting that child. Mm-hmm. And when you have compassion, when you can look at Julian and say, it is hard for a 6-year-old to remember. It will happen. I will hold space that it will happen. But I also have learned from Lisa that he doesn't have executive function. And he's not doing it to me. He's not trying to stick it to me when he forgets to put the shoes in the basket. He just he hasn't connected all the dots yet. The habit brain hasn't formed. The executive function isn't there. And it wasn't there for me. So I wasn't trying to disrespect my mom or be a bad girl. I just forgot to put the shoes in the cubby that she wanted them in. And she didn't get that, and neither did I. But it would have been great if the shoes wouldn't have ended up in the dumpster, and I can have compassion for myself, and I can understand that I wasn't flawed. I just didn't have the ability to remember day in and day out to put the shoes in the bin. Yeah, it's very beautiful. And it's why, it's the path to peaceful parenting, right? Because we're always working on it. We take 2 steps forward and a step back. It's why I have a membership, so that we can come and be in community and we can work on this and we can heal and grow. And, parenting is like an onion. You just get one thing solved, and the next day, you go, okay, we're 27 days into the shoes being in the basket, and now something else pops up, right? There's another layer to peel back. And so it's why inside, real world peaceful parenting and inside the Hive, we say progress, not perfection. I have setbacks, you have setbacks, but we don't need to make it mean anything about our parenting character. I mean, let's come full circle, right? When you have a setback, when you say something to them that afterwards you go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Like, okay, let me have compassion for myself. I was triggered, right? It's progress, not perfection. That was a process problem. I'm not a bad character. I just need to work on it and continue to want to do better. Mm-hmm. It's all interconnected.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this about the Hive. Not only is it wonderful to feel like you're not alone in your process problems, but it's taught me ways to deal with not just myself or Julian, but my parents, my brother, my friends. And it's, I am my own boss, so I don't have a boss. I don't have coworkers, but it's changed the way that I speak to myself. Mm. And that is, I think, a very important building block to parenting your children better, is speaking to yourself with some compassion and giving yourself space and holding space for yourself and not being so judgmental and not
attacking your character, right?
Yeah. Not attacking my own character.
Yes.
Like, how is that helpful?
Yes. And yes, I love what you said. Thank you for saying that about the Hive. I love the saying, as a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think when people come and join the membership community of the Hive, which we'll link to in the show notes, and if you want to know more about it, you can go to thehivecoaching.com, THEHIVE coaching.com. But I like to say a rising tide lifts all boats. And when you come into the Hive and join in the community and get coaching and listen to others get coached, every single relationship in your life gets better. Yourself, your co-parent, if you have a partner, your mother, your mother-in-law, the neighbor next door, your children, and most importantly, your relationship with yourself. And when you do this work, when one does this work and heals and grows, then you're also modeling that for your children. So the more compassionate you are, Samantha, and the more you think and model and say, oh, that was a process problem, not a character problem, the more you model that for Julian, the more he learns that too. So he learns not to self-deprecate. He learns not to flog himself. He learns not to hate on himself. He learns not to judge himself harshly and assume that he is flawed. And so that is so beautiful. That is what happens as we begin to model that. We begin to experience it, which feels good. We get a feel good, chemical release in our brain. We like ourselves more. And we model it not only for our children, but we model it for our partner and our co-parent and everybody that's around us. It's like, ooh, I'll have what she's having, right? And so, or what he's having. We have everybody in the Hive from all around the world. But that is the beauty of what happens is when we really learn process versus character problem, we also stop assaulting our own character. So good. So good. Thank you for being here today. This was just, I think, a conversation that people are just really going to value and learn from. And so thank you so much for coming and being here.
No, thank you for having me. It's great.
Yes. And listen, if this resonated with you, if you're thinking, whoa, That was amazing. You've got tingles. The hair on your arms stood up. You had any kind of experience from listening to Samantha and I want to encourage you to come over to thehivecoaching.com and check it out. It is an absolutely amazing community of like-minded parents on the path to peaceful parenting. And I promise you, after just 1 week in the Hive, you will feel different. You will feel more connected to your children. You will feel more connected to yourself, and you will get more cooperation from your kids. So come on over there and check us out. Again, my thanks to Samantha for being here and for sharing so openly. I just love it. I know you all are giving her a big round of applause as well. I love you all so much, and I'm proud of you for showing up here every week and doing this work. I really am. I'm just so proud of you. You benefit, your kids benefit, your parenting benefits. Well done. And as I say each week, until we meet again, I'm wishing you peaceful parenting.
Thanks for listening to Real World Peaceful Parenting. If you want more info on how you can transform your parenting, visit thepeacefulparent.com. See you soon.